My name is Patrick Nalepa. I'm a senior financial management major here at Hillsdale College and also a member of the men's golf team. On behalf of the entire senior class here at Hillsdale College, I'd like to welcome you to campus. Today, I've been given the great privilege and honor of introducing one of the most intelligent men I've ever met, our president, Dr. Larry Arnn. Dr. Arnn has accomplished much here at the college, but his accomplishments started many years before that. Upon graduating with his Bachelor's of Arts degree from Arkansas State in 1974 with highest distinction, he went on to earn his master's in government in 1976. Upon completing that, he went across the pond to be the director of research for the late Sir Martin Gilbert, the official biographer of Winston Churchill. Upon returning to the States, Dr. Arnn obtained his doctorate in government from the Claremont Graduate School in 1985 and became president of the Claremont Institute immediately following, an education and research institute in Southern California. There he served as president for 15 years before joining us here in Hillsdale. Currently, Dr. Arnn is on the board of directors for the Heritage Foundation, the Henry Salvarodi Center of Claremont McKenna College, the Philadelphia Society, the Intercollegiate Studies Institute, and the Claremont Institute. Dr. Arnn has been widely published on issues of public policy, history, and political theory across all forms of publications, and is currently overseeing the production of 7 document volumes that will complete the official biography of Winston Churchill. Since his time here at the college, Dr. Arnn has provided the leadership necessary to bring Hillsdale into the top tier of liberal arts school in the nation. He did so by initiating many academic programs, such as the Barney Charter School Initiative, the Alan P. Kirby Jr. Center for Constitutional Studies and Citizenship, and the new Graduate School of Statesmanship here on campus. Dr. Arnn also implemented the College Honor Code, which, signed by each freshman class, is a document that commits each student to the pursuit of both the intellectual and moral virtues that were laid out in the founding of Hillsdale College. This code acts as a bond between each incoming class and those who have gone before. That being said, please join me in welcoming the 12th president of Hillsdale College, the distinguished Dr. Larry Arnn.
Howdy. Sorry I'm late. I was talking to a very smart senior who's about to go to graduate school and might be a professor here one of these days, so he's more important than all of you. So this is going to be the biggest seminar you'll ever be in. I don't have to stand here, do I? I can walk wherever I want to go. So this is going to be the biggest seminar you'll ever be in until tomorrow, when Waylon is going to try to frighten you. Today, that's my job. I want to gain an understanding with you of why we're going to proceed the way we do and how we're going to proceed. And a whole lot of questions come up, and you've probably just begun to think about them, but we might as well anticipate them. First of all, after this, you're going to sign an honor code. You haven't signed it yet, is that correct? Yeah, so you gotta, or you don't get to stay. And nobody's ever raised a question about that since we published it 9 or 10 years ago, probably. And it's just a resurrection from something we used to do in the 19th century. And when we're done today, I hope we'll figure out why we do it and why it works, why it's good. It has something to do with you, what you're like. So the first thing is, why do we use the word honor, and why do we use the word college? Those are related things, I'm going to argue. So who can tell me what honor means? You're not going to be a useless freshman class, are you? There's 385 of you in here. Yeah, that boy knows. What is it?
Honor would be
Stand up.
Good job, Chief.
I would define honor as being true to your own, being true to what is good, and applying that in your character.
Oh, good. Okay, see. So you would define it that way. Does that mean you're making the claim that that's what it is? Yeah, okay, good. So what other words did he use? Good and character. Those are big words. And what is your name, dear, who wrote on the board? Rachel. We should all thank Rachel. She has an excellent hand. And what is your name? Quinn. What is good? Yeah.
Good is that which is moral and morally right, morally truthful.
You see how ambitious Quinn is? Because this is college now. If we use words, we need to know what they mean. So, you think good and moral are synonyms, Quinn?
Not quite.
Not quite. Distinguish them.
I don't know.
Okay, very good. Do you see that he just made a series of assertions that he knows what those words mean? But we're going to need all of those words. And the reason is, there's something about people, that would be you and me, that makes that word important and that word important. Now, Quinn has described that word as meaning qualities in the human being that are proper and worthy. Is that what it is? Yes, sir.
I think honor is something you acquire.
Acquire.
I don't think it's something that you're necessarily.
She's got a long way to go. Your name? Hunter. Ooh, I like that name. Although there's a Hunter who's a star for the San Francisco Giants. And the only dispute I have with the very great Professor Connor is that he thinks they're good. Hunter, what is it? Something you acquire.
I don't think it's something that is something you're born with. I think it's something that you grow to learn, gain as you grow.
Okay, and the question you're answering is honor synonymous with worthy qualities in the person? And your answer is, it's something you acquire. It could actually be not synonymous and be something you acquire, and it could be synonymous and be something you acquire. Right? So that might not help us answer Quinn's point, the first point raised. Anybody got another idea? Yes, sir.
Honor is a code by which one upholds one's own beliefs. And let me see if I can figure out how to set this down without tipping my chair over.
A code. What's your name?
My name is John.
John where? John who?
John Roman.
John
John Roman.
Roman.
Like the empire with a silent H.
Romani. Halfway between the empire and the gypsy. It's a code by which one upholds one's own beliefs. that good? Is that true? Dominic, what's the truth about that? This is the provost's son. And that means he's subject to any abuse that I care to heap upon him. But that doesn't really distinguish him. You're all up against that. Okay, so what is it?
I would agree with John that honor and Hunter that you require honor by defending your own beliefs, your own understandings of what is good and moral and right.
Who gives honor? Yes.
Thomas Mullen. I think honor is something that you're gifted with by the people around you.
Somebody else gives honor.
I don't think one person can have honor in themselves. I think it's a gift that you're given by those around you based on your virtues.
Okay, good. So what that means is, Thomas, is that your name? Thomas and Rachel are in the bingo category. That's correct, right? In other words, honor takes more than one. So the military man I met this morning, I'm sorry, repeat your name. Jamal. And how does it work in the military? Do you give yourself honor or somebody else give it to you? Right. You know, I own the highest Army civilian medal. So I have a medal that requires no courage, and I'm hoping for an honorary degree that requires no knowledge. So somebody else gives it to you. The Army is extremely good at that, by the way. Made me cry. And wow, it's a characteristic of honor, thank you. It's a characteristic of honor that it involves more than one. Is that a failing in honor? It does make it less self-sufficient, doesn't it? It means that you could be awesome and not have any honor. It also means that if other people are not awesome, you could get honor and not deserve it. Yes, sir.
Anyway, I think that there are two intertwined but distinct definitions of honor here. There are some people are mud.
Are you English?
I just explained. No,
Okay.
but there's honor as in a flattering praise, as it were, for want of a better term, that recognition of your merits. And there's honor as is becoming, both in how you are treated and how you treat others. They're like the two meanings of the word pride, they are connected, but they are distinct.
There you go. I agree with that. And what that means, though, is that even in your definition, although honorable behavior might be some absolute standard, there's always a suggestion in it that it involves what other people think, too. Right? Thank you. Yes, ma'am. What is your name? Shiloh. Oh, wow. Named after a battle? No. Place in the Bible. No, it's not. No, it's not.
Could we say that honor is perhaps the human recognition of another human's expression of divine attributes, like the pursuit of virtue? And so it depends both on the person's quality of virtue in themselves as they aspire to express it, but also on the admirers. So it's like both the person's aspiration to express divine attributes and the acknowledgement of it.
So it would then bind the people together. Its deficiency might be that there's two chances for it to be false instead of one. But the virtue might be it connects people. We want to talk about that word divine in a minute. And I'll just say, we're not there yet, but I'll say as a prequel to that, that we live in the age where the whole world is flat, everything is horizontal, and we're in the middle of it, and things get elevated because we value them. And as an antidote to that, among the people who come to Hillsdale College, they think that everything leads in one step to God, and maybe it does and maybe it doesn't. I actually fancy there are many steps. So by introducing that, which, by the way, I agree with every word you said, there's a whole bunch of arguments you've got to put together to get there. You're going to learn to make them. Okay, so the first thing we learn then is that honor is something that brings us together. What about college? What does that mean? Community, partnership, right? Today we think college means diversity. We actually think this. We think university. You know what university means? It's a Latin word. Uni means one, versa is like vice versa, things turning around, right? So it's things turning around one thing. Diversity means things turning around more than one thing. And so when the president of a nearby great university proclaims in public that the purpose of the University of Michigan is diversity, duh, maybe she ought to change the name, the Diversity of Michigan. And college means partnership, right? And so we have two words that involve connectedness. And we emphasize them here. So the next question is that right? I'll rephrase it to give a little more information. Is there something about us that makes it necessary when we learn and grow, and understand that term grow is a value-laden term, right? Do you see why? Can anybody tell me why? Yes, ma'am.
The fact that you say you're growing means that you think that you're progressing towards something good rather than something bad.
How does it mean that?
In usual use. But I'm sorry, I don't know what you mean.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am. So that's true what you said, but I wonder if you understand it. Yes, ma'am.
If you were progressing towards something that's bad, you wouldn't be growing, you would be regressing backwards.
How are we all going to end up? Dead, right? We're going to be soil, right? So when you say a thing is growing, it's actually true that the end of every living thing is decay. So you have to distinguish the place where the growing stops and the decay starts. And you wouldn't be able to do that without an expression or an understanding. What is it when it's fully itself? Went to a funeral of one of my oldest friends. I've been burying my teachers and my friends this year. Sign I'm getting old. And they read, one of my other oldest friends read Mark Antony talking about Brutus in Julius Caesar by Shakespeare, whom you probably know could write. And he says, he was sanguine and the elements, and this is a paraphrase, were so mixed up in him that nature itself could stand up and say to all the world, this was a man. Don't you see that it's a substantive thing? It's a thing. You can see what it is. And when a thing is becoming more like itself, then it is becoming a good one of them. And it is growing. And when it becomes less like itself, it is decaying. At any age, by the way. So in a community, what is it about human beings that in a community where they are to learn and grow, they require to do it together? Why is that? Who knows? Yes, sir.
You don't learn two ways. It's from either our mistakes or other mistakes. And in order to grow, you need to learn what is right and what is wrong. And if you're not learning from your mistakes, learn from someone else's. And also in that is, with the community, you also support. You have encouragement from one another to keep going towards what is right.
Examples and support. Thank you. Is that it? Yes, sir. Accountability. Discipline. Examples, support, and discipline. What is it? Anybody got another idea? Yes, sir.
Well, you can't really practice, like, being, you can't, we really don't talk about people practicing virtue on together by themselves. You need, if you're going to be honorable, you generally talk about being honorable in respect to how to treat other people, and you don't generally, if you're isolated.
So society sets up obligations where we practice the virtues. Is that your point?
We also have an opportunity to practice virtue. We really don't have much opportunity to practice virtue.
What are the virtues? Before we're done, we're going to... Okay, well, could you do those on a desert island? You know, if you're going on a sea voyage, I suggest you figure that out before you go. So, yes, ma'am, up in the top.
I think in all of this, we're implying that all humans are shooting toward a standard. Honor would be when we're all in one area, we're measuring each other by how fast or how close we are to reaching that standard. We're talking about how we measure that, but I think we're implying that there's something we're all shooting for, and that's how we view each other, is how close we've gotten to that.
So we measure ourselves against each other. Those all seem to me true, and they also, none of them seems to be the main thing. What are we doing right now?
We're learning.
And how are we doing it?
We're going to our masters. People who are able to impart knowledge.
And when you go to them, what happens?
Enter with an open mind and hope to learn.
Yeah, you're not alive to the fact that we're talking. Right? We're talking. Yes, ma'am. What? Contemplation, which is, by the way, the silent form of talking. Talking is the way we think out loud. And I forget, how many earthly creatures can do that? And you know, you mentioned the divine. When you think of another being that can do that, that being is called in one of his instances the Word. Talking is the divine gift. It is the respect in which we are created in the image of God. How do we do it? So, I'll use you. So what's that? That thing right there with the white t-shirt and the red hair. It's a girl, right? It's a girl, right? And the one next to her with the blonde hair, what's that? And yet, they're not the same. How'd you know? And you know, that's Rachel. I got two redheads. It's very confusing. What is your first name? Julia and Audrey. If Julia was the girl, Audrey would not be a girl. Right? And so, here's a weird thing. You never see the girl. You actually never see the anything, ever. And do you see why we can use the term girl, or the term bottle, or the term chair? We're actually seeing something that's not physically there all the time. And if we couldn't do that, we would be out without the common nouns. And without the common nouns, we couldn't talk. Some smart aleck make me a sentence without a common noun in it. There's always somebody who does. Yes, sir. Run. That's right, see? There's no noun in that sentence, right? Do you know what the sentence means? You know how you know? How do you know? You know what running is. And running is a noun. In fact, there are many ways to run. You could run the way our national beating cross-country teams run. You could run rapidly. Or you could run the way I run. Right? And they're both running. And so just like Julia and Audrey, neither of them is the girl. No running is the running. And yet we see it inevitably every time and automatically. And we don't even require to be taught to do it. Whereas you come over to my house tonight, you'll meet our dogs. They're the stupidest dogs in the county. And even if they weren't the stupidest dogs in the county, you would never teach them to talk. And our talking depends upon our seeing the common being that makes each thing in a category itself. And so the philosopher writes, the good and being are convertible terms. That means every time you identify a thing as fitting in a category described by a common noun, you are recognizing in it the good of that thing. And things that are absent that good, to the extent of the absence, are not anything. Now that's magical when you think about it, because what it means is, when the philosopher writes in the first sentence of the Nicomachean Ethics, what are the words? In Greek, the words are techne, art, prohairesis, choice, methodos, means systematic inquiry. I'm forgetting the fourth. Aims at some good. He's describing every voluntary human action. But also, he's describing the way we talk. And that means that this question of the good is a question that we share in a different way than any creature can do. Our biological connections among ourselves and among humans are much closer and more demanding than other creatures. It's very hard to raise kids. And all of you've got parents, and their parents are up here just weeping like 4-year-old babies yesterday, right? And now they're gone, and some of you admit that you miss them, and the rest of you are liars, right? And they miss you very much. I had more grown men crying at this thing than I've ever observed before. I had one fellow 15 minutes after it was over, and he came up and he hugged me. I thought he was going to hurl me to the ground. And he said, "You've just got to take care of my son, and I know that you will." And I said, "Well, sir, I don't know him yet, but I promise I'm going to beat the tar out of him." And you know what he said? He said, "Oh, that's good," he said. So those connections are really close, and closer than other creatures. And one of the paradoxes of the human being is that despite the fact that we have need for each other more powerfully through the family and through biology than other kinds of creatures, it's also true that we have complete discretion over it. In this day and age, we forget about those biological connections and their importance, and the family is collapsing, and there's some danger it might be outlawed. But never mind, it's still the case that you guys take a long time to grow up, and you're a pain beyond raising dogs, and they're hard. You see? And yet, one of the reasons is it's sort of in the order of nature that you get more when you get to be this age and beyond. So those connections are close, but they're nothing like this connection of talking. We've been in here 30 minutes. Are we getting to know each other? And all we've been doing is talking. That's the human gift. And you learn through talking. And you need each other. Just like we need this conversation. I could not speak to you so well if you did not speak up, however well I can do it. Whether even if I do it badly, it is still made better by my finding out what you have to contribute, because first of all, it tells me something about you, and second of all, half the time I discover in my classes the students figured out, say something to me that teaches me something. This partnership then is very profound. You're joining it. You must take it seriously. It depends on everyone in this room and everyone in this community, and I assert to you, as you will come to see, it depends on that for the rest of your life and the rest of all of our lives. We have joined the highest kind of human association, and we can make each other fully human if we treat it seriously. And we must. When you sign the code, that's what you say you're going to do. It means, for example, you promise not to come to class half asleep or unprepared. And it's going to be the most obvious thing in the world when you sit in the class, because it's hard. It's really exciting. You know, today we were looking at all this pre-opening stuff and figuring out if we're doing it right, because somebody wanted to show a video here today, and take part of my time. And I, of course, immediately forbade it. And on the other hand, then I showed up 5 minutes late. It was probably only a 3-minute video. But I'm still able to get away with things like that. You'll see that Wednesday, it'll all be great, because you're going to meet the people who can teach. And you're going to meet them in small groups, and you're going to have something really great to talk about, and you're going to go, wow, never saw anything like this before. You see, so these few days are just a preparation for that. And it really doesn't matter whether we do a good job with this or not, because the rest of it's going to go great. But you have to be worthy of it for it to go great. You must give yourself to it and to everyone else here. You were made for that. Deny it if you will. It's still the obvious fact. Now, I told you that the college has 4 purposes. I'll recite them. All of these are derived from the founding document of the college. The college was founded in 1844 by a bunch of New England preachers, and they were big-time patriots. Several of them became friends of Abraham Lincoln. They helped to save the Union. They did it in 2 ways. They reasoned through to help to invent the platform that Lincoln was elected president on. And they did it, so that was just thinking, studying, contemplating. And then they did it by all the boys, and many of the girls just took off in the war, and we were reduced to a fraction of our size. And they fought very nobly. And nobody made them do that, and we don't do military training here today. And yet we send more kids to the Marine Corps than any college in this region, 70 colleges we've been told. Most of them are larger than us. Several of them are more than 10 times larger than us. Why do they do that? So the purposes of the college, founded by these people who started it, are high learning. We've just been talking about what that is. What are you, and what are you for? And what is the chain of ends above you in which you can find your fullness? You need to know that. People think today that that's not urgent and that we should get on with more serious things like training people how to be welders and dental assistants. But if you want to be a good welder, and a dental assistants are fine things to do, although I'm not partial to the dental assistants. If you want to be a good one of those, you need to be a good human being too. And that means the question comes up, what is that? And how should it be, given that it's got choices. The second thing is Christianity. This college is strange about that. It's always been deeply devoted to Christianity, and it's never required a faith statement to attend. There are non-Christians here in this room today, and they are as welcome as everyone else. And that's always been the case. Most people are Christians, and the college has purposes of teaching Christian precepts. That's written into the original. That, by the way, is very like the first thing, too, because you know this high learning stuff? Come to find out it's hard. And hasn't it just been exhibited that when you first start thinking about a thing, it's impossible for everybody to agree, because what do the devil they know? They're all just speculating. And also, human reason is weak. And that means that we can imagine a being that reasons perfectly. That is to say, when it sees a thing, it understands it fully, and it understands everything all at once. That would be God. In both the classic works and in the early Christian and medieval Christian works, and indeed in Farabi and Avicenna and the great classical Muslim thinkers. So what we do instead is we go from thing to thing. Like what you're listening to me do is help you make connections that I have already made. And you have to have those connections. And they become a thing of beauty if they do so, because one connects to the next, and then you suddenly go, oh, I see what that is. And that means, of course, what we can't do is command agreement all the time. And I'll get to that. The third purpose of the college is human freedom. And the institutions that have proved the best at protecting it, which are named in the beginning of the articles in language that echoes the Declaration of Independence. And of course, Central Hall was dedicated on the 4th of July. And what are those institutions? They're easy to see. The first one is representative government. That is to say, the government can't do anything to you unless you tell it it's okay. The government belongs to you. And the second is limited government under constitutional forms that operate stably over time and grant and limit power in ways that are stable. The college was born in loyalty to that. And finally, good behavior. I want to go back to the Christian point again because I left out one thing. It's an interesting thing about Christianity that it's radically a volitional religion. I think the other great religions are too, but in the Christian way, I'll tell you how it's so. Jesus did something really weird. He declared that he was one God for every person on earth. And that means the Germans and the English and everybody, and the Chinese and everybody, right? But then he also said, my kingdom is not of this world. And he didn't set up courts and enforcement and laws. And that means we're all going to live in our polities, but we all have a right to worship as we please. When Jesus says to the Pharisees, I think it was, they say, who do you pay tribute to, God or Caesar? And he says, show me a coin, a denarius. And they show him, and it's got a picture of Caesar on it. And he says, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and unto God what is God. But you know, people miss this point. That was an act of rebellion in the state of Rome at that time, because Caesar claimed the authority to define what belonged to whom. And Jesus is saying, as regards the next world, you follow me no matter what. But obey the law, as long as it doesn't interfere with that. Freedom of religion is implicit in those set of relationships. And the college is grateful in the first line for the inestimable blessings, that is to say, a gift from God, of civil and religious freedom and intelligent piety. That's the reason I think that they never required a faith statement in the beginning of the college, and why we don't today. The fourth thing is good behavior. You'll notice that we segregate our dormitories by sex. And at some point that will be inconvenient to you. sometimes, not very often, but sometimes I'll get arguments that, we should really forget about that and let people stay through the night because they do have so much studying to do. And I will look at them and I'll say to the young men who are typically the one who come and make that argument, I'll say, do you remember that I'm a boy too? Unlike you, the father of 4. So we should list these virtues. Where's that kid up there who brought him up? The desert island boy. There he is. He's got his feet up now. So what are the virtues?
Well, the ancient, a lot of, it's been pretty much recognized that prudence, fortitude, temperance, those are all virtues.
Prudence, fortitude, temperance?
There are other virtues as well. But
There are more. So, yeah, justice. Very good. So can you see his first footnote on his first paper? It's been pretty much recognized. That was good. Yeah, so the 4 cardinal virtues are, what's courage? You know what courage is. Come on. Yes, sir.
to be right in spite of any obstacle.
Not just obstacle. Danger. You might get hurt. Isn't it weird about our nature? That we're sitting here having this discussion and we are using terms that people have been able to use for 3,000 years of recorded history. And yet we're also sitting here inside these bodies and we're afraid anytime it looks like they might get hurt. Because they're perishable. And that's poignant when you have an immortal soul. Right? And so the first great obstacle to good living is written in the nature of human beings, and that is pain and death and danger. And of course, do you all know the philosopher Jack Handy? The Saturday Night Live philosopher, right? My family, he's a big favorite in my family. One of my daughters actually quoted him in a Latin commencement address at the Hillsdale Academy. And he says, if you mean by cowardice scraping and worming and begging and crawling, then okay, Mr. Brave Man, maybe I am a coward, right? Because what would you do not to be hurt? Would you wrong another? Would you betray your loyalties? Because if you would, you're a coward. There's a code in the military. I used to know James Bond Stockdale, who won the Congressional Medal of Honor serving his country in a POW camp in Vietnam, a barbaric place at that time. And he's the one who helped develop the code. Everybody testified to it. They're going to torture you, and you're going to break. You must make them torture you first. Isn't that hard? Isn't that an amazing thing to say to a bunch of half-starved people? It's okay if you suffer first. The result will be the same. And they did that. And then several of them, the ones who all won the big medal, most of them won medals, the ones who won the big medal, what they did is went beyond that. So one guy won it by blinking out Morse code while he was giving his confession that he had been a barbarian and killed civilian and babies especially on the orders of the United States of America. But he blinked like that, and he said, lie, 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 like that, right? And then you know what Stockdale did? They put him in a room and cleaned him up every time. And Stockdale didn't ask anybody else to do this. And so he's in that room, and they're trying to make him look as good as they can so before they film him. And so what he would do is he would pick up a chair and he would hammer himself in the face and disfigure himself, or do it on the edge of the table. And then they couldn't put him in front of the camera. And then they would torture him later for that, and then he would do it again. Is that an honorable thing to do? Do you like that story? Does it make you sit up a little straighter? Because see, the reason is you face that trial too. All of us do. And you have the same loves he has. And so that thing that threatens you and the things you love, how do you bring those into accord? When it concerns danger and pain and death, you do it through courage. What's the next one? Temperance, you said. What's temperance? That is the correct disposition toward pleasure. You like pleasure? Nobody likes pleasure as much as you guys. And I'll tell you why. Your bodies are just coming into their own, and they're young and they're fresh, and you can really feel pleasure. Wow. You know? Have any of the boys noticed that the girls are attractive? Not saying I have. One time, one of my favorite students here in graduate school now, she came to me that a young man who came to one of our conferences had behaved himself improperly to her. He touched her, not in the worst possible way, but some, and she was uncomfortable. And so I said, what do you want me to do? And she said, Dr. Arnn, you'll do the right thing. I just wanted you to know. So I did call his employer, found out that this was the third instance of that, and he lost his job over, so I was glad I called. But of course, people shouldn't treat young ladies like that. And I said to this girl, I said, you know, dear one, I said, you know, dear one, I call you all dear. And I said, you know, I personally have put my hand on your shoulder. And she said, Dr. Arnn, everybody knows you're safe. But you see, if I weren't, what would corrupt me? She was a beautiful girl. And you know, the greatest woman I ever met happens to be my wife. The temptation to betray her is written in the natural human desires. You've seen or read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe? And the little boy betrays his siblings to the wicked queen for Turkish delight. It's just a model of all delight. What would you do for the ultimate pleasure? Would you lie? Would you cheat? The next one is justice. If there's some good thing, what would you rather? You have it or somebody else have it? I mean in the abstract. Right? Best room in the dorm, if there is one. There probably is, actually. First place in the line. The last steak. All that, right? Well, honor. We have an honorable society. It binds us together. We all commit to it, right? And that means who gets honor? Well, justice it goes to the one who deserves it. And justice in you is paying that honor, impartial even as regards yourself. Trying to do fairness by everybody. What was the last virtue of the cardinal virtues? Prudence, you said. And sometimes they say prudence, and sometimes they say wisdom. What's the difference between prudence or wisdom and the other three? Sir?
I'm going to venture to say that prudence is taking cautionary steps, and that wisdom is simply knowing.
Close. But my question was, I've named 4, and I'm implying that 3 of them fit in a group, and the 4th one fits in a different group. Yes, sir. No, you've already talked. You've already talked to somebody who hadn't talked. You tell me. Close. They are virtues of thinking, right? Where's the other 3? Yes, sir.
Prudence is the ability to know when to apply the other 3 virtues.
That's good. That's true. That's a bingo. What's your name? Austin. When we're done, you come over and write your name up here. Also, Somebody over here got a bingo, but I didn't do it properly. Whoever it is and is worthy, give yourself the justice of writing your name up there. Okay, so the intellectual virtues are virtues of thinking, and the moral virtues are virtues of doing. And Austin up there just said a pregnant thing. The two kinds come together. First, let's distinguish them quickly. We're going to finish here in a minute, because are we getting tired? We're only little freshmen. Now we're not tired. So, prudence and wisdom are distinguished. There was a hint of it about why. Wisdom is not just knowing. Wisdom is knowing elevated things, ultimate things. The way you get it is you figure them out for a long time. Wisdom accumulates. That's why we think of wise people being old. And each conquest along the way to think is a climb up a mountain. And each footstep that you take and each foothold that you find is the preparation for the next step. Living the life of the mind is climbing like that. And one argument gets in you. I told you, I think I said it at freshman convocation, maybe I just only told your parents, but you've got, tomorrow we're going to dump there, Wednesday, we're going to dump this big old jigsaw puzzle out on the table, and all the pieces are little, and there are a lot of them, and you won't know where any of them goes. And so you got to put it together. And every time you get a bit put together, it will suggest other bits, and it'll get easier while you go, but it's almost impossible at the beginning. That's one of the many reasons you need teachers, right? And wisdom is like that, right? As the picture forms, it starts to become coherent, and it suggests the other solutions. That's what wisdom is like. What's prudence like? Prudence is the place. Yes, sir?
If wisdom is understanding how more pieces of the puzzle are put together, then prudence is knowing that you shouldn't just try and force pieces where they don't belong.
That's glib and good, but not exhaustive. Who are you again? John, you can put yourself up there too. I want you to do it right. We'll take a picture of it and preserve it for all time. And so here's the problem with our lives, right? You know that courage and moderation stuff I said, pleasure and pain? And here's the difficulty. Whatever is good, these wisdoms that we learn, this ascent that we make to wisdom, that actually mostly deals with things that don't change. But then on the other hand, what's life like? It's always lived in circumstances. And there are these pressures, and they're constant. Is it wrong to kill? Is it? It's not a yes or no? Ooh, that's interesting. So it depends, right? Depends on whether you want to. No. I'm always threatening to kill students. And I've hardly ever done it. Yeah, no. Wouldn't it be truer to say it's wrong to kill, but circumstances could make it okay? Even good. Would you say that? It's a trap question, but Lord, what you said, you just gave away the store, right? Because if you say it depends, what does it depend on?
It's good to kill when it can save.
When it can save life, right? So Winston Churchill in 1914 had been advised that if the Germans landed, 1940, if the Germans landed, that they were going to lose southern England, which means they were going to lose London, which means that the capital would be gone, which means that, wow, how are they going to get rid of them if they land? Because they got a much bigger army than the British. Maybe they're going to conquer the whole country. And he wrote a speech. He never had to give it because they didn't land. And the speech was entitled, "You Can Take One With You." Now, I don't think that the purpose of that speech was to spare lives. I think the purpose of that speech was to say, better to die than live as a Nazi. So in other words, circumstances which are very unpredictable have a profound influence on what it is right to do. And that means that in action, the right thing involves contemplating or deliberating about, because deliberation is the form of reasoning that leads to choices, deliberating about these circumstances as they appear in light of ultimate ends. What is the prudent thing to do? That doesn't mean the cautious thing to do. That means the right thing to do right here and right now. And you're going to have to make lots of choices like that. Students need courage because at the end it's overwhelming. And you'll think, it's like in every battle it's like this. The enemy comes, and the first pattern you see is that there are these many, and then there are more, and then there are more, and then there are more. And so the pattern suggests that there's an infinite number. So of course what you want to do is panic and run away. And then on the other hand, study is like that too, especially your first midterms and finals this year, this term. How? Because you're going to figure out after about a week, wowie, look at all this. I'll never manage it. And I'm used to making A's. Forget that, right? So you have to budget your time. And that means, by the way, you have to have the courage to possess yourself and do your best work and even get the sleep you need. And then prudence. That's just choosing, what am I going to work on in the next hour and a half? Given all of the factors. And what are the factors? How near are the exams? How far behind am I? What in my current state of physical and mental productivity can I do best with this time? And you will become more skillful at that. Now, the development of those four virtues, plus the theological virtues, are the explicit aims of the college. That's why good behavior matters. So I'm going to close with this point. Finally. It is a fact, I assert it, that you are a kind of thing, and you are made for a purpose. And you have managed to maneuver yourself to a place where you can live an excellent human life. And you get to start on a different level day after tomorrow. And the glories that can be won are the highest available to human beings. It takes us all. You can argue anything you want. You must respect the purposes of the institution. Why? Because they are the product of 2,500 years of thinking by brilliant people, because they bring us together and provide a forum for us to work together and benefit each other, and because hundreds of thousands, in fact millions of people over the life of the college have sacrificed so that we could have this privilege. We owe each other. But the last point is selfish. Do you want to be a happy and good and great human being? Are you ambitious enough for that? Do you want to take that for yourself and use it to do good to everybody you know? Do you want to be known as wise and just and brave and moderate? Do you want to be a blessing to your children, to your spouses, to your fellow citizens? Do you want that? That's what you promised to do, and it'll cost you. You've got the youth and the energy and the brains to pay the cost. Get up every day ready to go. Thank you.